So it's my pleasure to introduce this new webinar that we organize once more about the Catholic identities of our Catholic institutions. And I would like to thank Katia Passerini and Father Musas who have accepted our invitation. So just a few words. I think that you have seen on the invitation the impressive curriculum of Katia and Father Musas. I would just want to underline that Katia is not only the provost and executive vice president of Seton Hall University. She is also, and we are very proud of that, she is also a member of our administrative board at IFCU, at the International Federation of Catholic Universities. And through Katia, I would like to thank more globally Seton Hall University for its involvement in the Federation, and more specifically, I see here on the screen Ines Mourzakou, who is also very committed to our university and who is the leader of an international research group about Catholic identities, and more specifically Catholic studies in our institutions. Just a few words about Father Musas, who has several skills, competencies on his curriculum. He is not only a theologian, but also a specialist, and a great specialist of international security, and more specifically on nuclear security. So I give you the floor, Katia. I would like to thank you once more. I will stay, of course, I will remain here during all the webinar, and after your speech, we will have a discussion with the attendees. So thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Francois, and great to see everyone in whichever time zone you are. Some of you are, I know, in Europe, but we also have colleagues joining from Latin America, Asia. So thank you for joining us this morning. The way we have organized this presentation is more actually as a dialogue and discussion. And whenever we have to do dialogue and discussion and stimulate an interesting conversation, I always go to a very dear colleague for help, Father Colin Kay, who you might see in one of the small windows in front of us, who is our Vice President for Mission and Ministry, Father Kay, who is really also another one of the souls behind the work that we are discussing today. Him and I, and Father Musas, being in one of the committees that worked on our Catholic intellectual tradition introduction and a statement for the university, have been engaged in bringing this statement to fruition as part of the work that we have done at Seton Hall University in our strategic plan, which is about to end this November. And two key areas of our strategic plan for Seton Hall were connected to engaging in a dialogue with culture today by defining and affirming what we believe are two important means of dialoguing. One is guaranteeing academic freedom outside of the classroom, because here in the US we have a very strong framework of academic freedom within the classroom, but classrooms today are becoming boundaryless. So as a Catholic institution, we want to invite dialogue also outside of our confined boundaries of a classroom. So we worked on a statement of what it means for a university like us to welcome speakers from every different types of organization or beliefs. And as well, in addition to that, we wanted to work on our strategic plan on the Catholic intellectual tradition as a definition that will accompany people from any different type of origin in understanding what our institution is about, so that we can come together on a definition that it's always a definition in evolution. It's never permanent, but it enables us to start a conversation. So to do that work, we worked with Father Kay, who helped us assemble an incredible team, and we'd like to share a little bit about that work. Father Kay, that wasn't easy work, right?
No, it was not quite. But that's why they call it work.
That's why they call it work. And so what we thought we were going to do today is actually just show you a website that we have put together that gives you an introduction of what are the key tenets of the Catholic intellectual tradition statement for Seton Hall University, and then invite us, everyone, in a conversation, and even sharing your perspective on what you do at your own institutions and how you have engaged in similar dialogues. So with that, Father Brian, you were the lead in co-chairing the committee that worked on this Catholic intellectual tradition statement. And I'm happy to pull it up for you on the screen if you want to just give an overview of how the process worked.
May I interrupt for a moment?
Sure.
Forgive me, Katia. You or Father Brian, could you give us a little background about the big bang that resulted in a strategic plan for Seton Hall, and in particular, this emphasis on academic freedom and Catholic intellectual tradition? Brian, you might have been with us longest. Do you have any feel for the genesis of it all?
Of the strategic plan?
The strategic plan and these principal thrusts.
So I was actually involved in some of the committee meetings that led up to the strategic plan, but today I think the focus is mostly on the Catholic intellectual tradition. There were a number of things that grew out of the strategic plan. One of these was a statement about academic freedom outside the classroom. And what we're talking about here today, an introductory statement on the Catholic intellectual tradition. And this statement really came about because what is the Catholic intellectual tradition? It is a term that we are familiar with, but it may not be familiar to people who are outside Catholicism and who may be entering academia for the first time. And so we wanted to have an introduction that could be understood and accessible. Accessible not only in the sense that it would not presuppose any prior exposure to the Catholic intellectual tradition, but also that it would be accessible online for anybody who was interested. This was something for parents, for prospective students. And as we developed this statement, it was a very inclusive process. We involved the deans from all of the schools and colleges on campus. We involved faculty members as part of the committee, and they were representative as well. We involved the priest community. We involved administrators. We involved the Board of Regents and the Board of Trustees. And we got a lot of feedback. And from my perspective, it was almost uniformly positive feedback with friendly amendments and expressions that, oh, this is something useful. I can use this in my classroom. I can use this in my research. I have a framework that I can use to take the classroom, to take the research, to take the libraries, to take all aspects of life and begin to fit this into a framework that helps me to understand and execute the Catholic mission of the university better. I can go on, but I want to make sure that I'm answering the question that I think you asked.
Yeah,
No,
and I think he was asking also a question on why we did this and why are we just opposing this to the academic freedom beyond the classroom. And one of the reasons why we did this, in addition to all that you described, giving a starting point, a definition that was consistent across the university and shared with the entire community, was also we have invited the entire community to an open dialogue. But when you do that, our framework for the academic freedom beyond the classroom also tells us it has to be a dialogue that listens to many voices, not just the Catholic voice, and this is what we mean by Catholic and Catholic intellectual traditions, but if we listen to other voices, how do we balance those perspectives? How do we bring a dialogue that talks about topics from many different points of views, including the one that represents our mission? And so the reason why those two big goals came together were because while we were opening up the university to a richer dialogue, we also said we want to reaffirm the dialogue and the way we perceive our mission and the dialogue within the university. So did that answer your question, Father Kay?
it does, and I would just add that dialogue, encounter, conversation is our mission. It's the way we teach, it's the way we learn, it's the way we servant lead one another, I think. I seldom find myself with the best idea in any room or the best answer or even any of the answers, but I do like to ask the questions, and I do like to ask the follow-up questions that provisional answers offer us. And when I start preaching about identity and mission, I find myself talking about the woman at the well, John 4, and all of us encountering Jesus in and through one another here at the well at Seton Hall. And I think, Father Brian, you were co-chair of our statement on the Catholic intellectual tradition. I think in particular, we meant this to be something of an invitation to become more aware that we are right in the middle of the Catholic intellectual tradition here at Seton Hall, and take a more active role, take a more on-purpose, intentional approach to it.
Well, I think that's right. And I think that's why when the introductory statement was crafted, that we had 4 words that kind of guided our writing. One of those words was depth, because of course we want to have a broad education, but we want to go deep. We want to educate the whole person. We have at Seton Hall a slogan, "What great minds can do." And if taken in isolation, you might think, well, what about the rest of the person? But of course, from a Catholic perspective, the intellect is a spiritual faculty. And another seminal slogan at Seton Hall is that we are a place for the heart, the mind, and the spirit. And so this allows us to approach all dimensions of the human person, including the fact that human beings, even as individuals, are social. And so there is a natural call to justice and solidarity and even stewardship from that point of view, which leads us then to the idea of integration, not only integration of all aspects of the human person, but also between faith and reason, between various disciplines, and ultimately answering the question of what is the best way to live. Now, of course, we also talk about identity, because the Catholic intellectual tradition is something that does exist. It is something that can be identified. It's something that can be distinguished from, but is related to the Catholic doctrinal tradition. But it also is about a way of encountering all of life, encountering all of faith, encountering all of learning, encountering all of research. And so taking depth and identity and integration together then leads us to what Katya was speaking about before, about listening and interacting with and welcoming the interaction with traditions other than our own. And we called this hospitality, which is not a word that you might necessarily expect from a technical standpoint. But again, this is an introduction that is meant to be accessible. It is meant to be inviting. And so it is a way of expressing Seton Hall's commitment towards engaging the great questions of the age, the great religious traditions of the world, our way of taking responsibility for the tranquilitas ordinis, if I may use a Latin phrase, the tranquility of order, or what to modern ears might be loosely but accurately understood as the well-ordered peace. And I think that it is in the context of that kind of peace that we have the intellectual freedom to engage, to question, to disagree, and to understand better.
Katya and Brian, I think you know well, I pride myself on being almost never in my office. Thanks to my devices, I try to be out and about and listen and enter into conversations where I find them already happening. And especially in the university center, I think sometimes undergraduates in particular, because they know I'm around, they raise their voices a little bit and make sure that I hear what they are saying. And at least in some of the circles that I move in, some of our humans on campus would be surprised to find us presenting ourselves as hospitable. The news out there, sometimes even in corners of our campus, more like the church is judgmented, bigoted, elitist, anti-science, homophobic, hypocritical.
Thanks, I feel so good now.
So,
but
and
I think this
yeah.
statement is the way to begin a different kind of conversation.
And I think that's why it was so important for us to start with this definition and statement as an introduction to dialogue and reaffirm hospitality, because we wanted to make it very explicit that we're open to these conversations within the framework of what we believe in. And I've shared in our chat for our guests the statement on the Catholic intellectual tradition. I will also share next, you just have to give me 1 second because I'm only using one screen today, the statement of academic freedom beyond the classroom that we also worked on as part of our strategic plan, exactly for the reason that Father Kay is discussing. Our students are embedded in a culture that wants a broader discussion on many different topics, wants to bring plays, want to bring guest speakers that sometimes, you know, help us reflect on bigger questions also in a critical way. And so what we wanted to do is say, we're going to get into the fray. We're going to be open in having this conversation, not only within the confines of the classroom, but also outside of it. But we wanted to do it respectful of what we believe in. And we strongly believe in, and we affirmed this in our Catholic intellectual tradition statement, that there is a very clear integration between faith and reason. Dr. Murzato, Francois mentioned there before with Catholic studies departments, a lot of the courses that Ines brings to campus are really about the integration of faith and reason, and they're about science that can really be understood from a faith-based perspective. So that's what we believe in, and we want everybody at our universities to know and understand it. Although maybe half or so of our university students might not be Catholic, they certainly come here because of our faith-based views and approach to a higher level of spirituality that integrates our learning in everything that we do.
Sorry,
yeah.
Katya. Well, we have the words, and I think they're beautiful words. They're very well put together, both statements, the statement on academic freedom outside the classroom a lot longer, but beautiful. And we have, I think, very well put together words on the Catholic intellectual tradition. Not a final statement, of course, on what the Catholic intellectual tradition is meant to be. It's a living, breathing, walking, talking thing, after all. So what's next? We've got the words. We've got the words. Brian, any thoughts from the committee and from various mission explicit corners of the university about what next to do with a statement like this?
Well, we've got the words and we've also got the website. And
tell us more.
So the website is only in its beginning stages. This is the website 1.0. And already we're starting to populate it with other things. There was a video that was recorded by Monsignor Guarino talking about the Catholic intellectual tradition in just a few minutes, because some people prefer to see and hear rather than to read, which is wonderful. We should reach out that way. We are looking to record more videos from various student perspectives. And we're starting to use this website, we hope, as a way of breaking down some of the silos that exist on campus and making it a clearinghouse for all things Catholic intellectual tradition related, so that one person can go to one website and find out about news and events, about scholarship, about the various centers on campus that are related to the Catholic intellectual tradition, and even giving a link to click to contact us if they want to go further.
I tell people across campus and beyond that we have that expression in English, birds of a feather flock together. We have much too much of that, at least in our corner of the world today. We need more birds not of a feather flocking together and talking together and encountering one another. I want poets and priests and philosophers and political scientists engaging with one another. And I think a common ground like the Catholic intellectual tradition will help. But we're not starting at zero, are we, Katya?
No,
it's not as if we've got nothing going on already here too.
No, we're not, and I'd like to invite Ines to share some of the work that she has been doing. But we have had an opportunity to really work in many different directions. But one that Father Brian mentioned before, with referring to Monsignor Guarino in his video on the Catholic intellectual tradition that you will find on the website, is we have really been trying to humanize and translate what we are discussing around CIT by looking at the different audiences that we have. So there is a project which is part of an academy that we found through the Provost Office called the Corecast, that actually is a series of podcasts where we have faculty and students coming together and discussing parables and really humanizing the Catholic intellectual tradition from the perspective of those who are listening to it. So that's work that it's important for us to do so that we really continue to get close to where the students are. In the same way that Father Colin Kay mentioned before, that he's at the University Center, which is the center where all the students assemble to get the Starbucks coffee, which is obviously is a very popular place. But we go there, we go into the fray to continue those discussions with them. So a lot of additional initiatives around that. A wonderful retreat that we do every year to make sure that we bring, and the retreat is carefully organized, that only members, we don't use outside consultants, we use members of our community and the priest community to deliver this retreat so that we can continue the dialogue after the retreat is over. We have a project that is called Mission Ambassador, that it's Mission Mentors, which is a project where we have senior faculty who is very familiar and very well vetted in the Catholic intellectual tradition, pair with junior faculty who might need to learn more, and they become buddies and work on projects together. So we wanted to transform this into something that is alive and kicking throughout the academic year.
Anything to add, Brian?
Or Ines, anything that you want to
Ines,
add about?
please,
Yes.
yes. One of the things, not to steal your thunder, Ines, but one of the things I've been most impressed with in my time here at Seton Hall is the work that your program and the Center for Catholic Studies, the engagement with our students studying the sciences, and the very strong connections we make between very Catholic mission on an identity explicit teaching and writing and research and living, and that other side of campus, or that other side of our brains. Tell us more.
Yes, exactly. What comes to mind, actually, at Seton Hall, we have a splendid tradition regarding science. Father Stanley Yaki, that I'm sure that Katya and Father Brian and Father Kay know. He was a Benedictine monk, but also scientist, a physicist. And when I started at Seton Hall, I was reading the history of Seton Hall identity. Where this Seton Hall, where can I fit in this environment? And Father Stanley Yaki was this, beacon. And I said, oh my goodness, he really did it, faith and reason, because these are the two pillars, right, of the Catholic intellectual tradition. And I really, when I started my directing the program and the activities that we have, not only the programmatic, not only the academic piece, but also all the other speakers and panels and faculty retreats and so on and so forth. I use Father Yaki as an example. And we started with the first faculty retreat. We invited the faculty from the sciences, which I can say, it's sometimes very hard to get the scientists on board with the Catholic intellectual tradition, how to build those bridges of dialogue with this faculty. And I can say that a group of this faculty were also atheists. They had no, although, of course, they worked for Catholic University, but, the scientists tend to be more, how can I say, question the faith in a good way. So bringing these people together via Father Yaki was a good strategy, I think. And from that group of first faculty that were brought together, we built some fantastic courses that we are very proud to have, to offer to students. For example, Creation and Science, which also won the Templeton Prize, or Catholic Science and Theology of Food, taught by Father Buonapane, who is a priest, but also a chemist. Then we have Faith and Reason. We have Catholic Theology of Science. So all this cluster of courses that kind of bridge faith and reason and faith and science, they make a lot of sense to our students who are not going into taking, courses in theology, just dogmatic theology or systematic theology, or the same with philosophy. So we go via their disciplines, meaning the sciences, and we get the Catholic intellectual tradition via sciences, inviting the students, to think not only on scientific terms, but also in using, the discipline of science in this case. Another example that has been very successful at Seton Hall is with two other colleagues from social work, doctors Don Apgar and Anthony Nicotera. We created a double major in Catholic Studies and Social Work. This has been a wonderful, wonderful trajectory for the three of us, but also for our students. What are we offering to our students? A social work with this Catholic intellectual tradition embedded into social work. I didn't know much about the social work, but then now that I have read a lot about social work, I said, oh my goodness, the Catholic social teaching is social work, but we do not call it social work if you read the principles of the social work. So these are all opportunities for faculty to reflect And also, one thing that probably we need to do better is assessing all this, the faculty that we have all the retreats, for example, here on campus, but also internationally. What are the results of how do the faculty grow, or what do they produce, right? And I'm thinking here about courses. I can go on and on with this, but this is the trajectory.
Inez, may I ask?
Of course.
May I ask a follow-up question, which is, I'm hoping now that we are able to hear from more of our participants on the webinar now. But as a segue to that, one of the things I find myself asking myself all the time, I ask myself, is this a Catholic thing? Is this a Catholic higher education thing? Or is it only a Catholic higher education thing in the New York metropolitan area or the Northeastern United States? In other words, does Catholic life, does Catholic education, does the Catholic intellectual tradition look differently? Do humans look at it differently from other parts of the world? And so I'm asking you, by way of beginning that, Inez, and Katia too. All of us in the United States are from elsewhere, but both of you are recently from elsewhere. Do you find any distinguishing elements of the at least Northeastern American experience that informs our approach to Catholic higher education, Catholic mission and identity, and the Catholic intellectual tradition?
Yeah. So if I may, and I really would love to hear from our participants here, because I'm sure that they'll bring many different perspectives. But I think that our perspective here in the Northeast, and even comparing with other institutions and Catholic institution near us, is we have made Catholicity everybody's commitment, everybody's business. It's not just the theology and Catholic course that the students are taking, but as Inez was describing, is really the set of options that we offer in the university. Even if they're not inside a classroom, that is what define the mission and transfers the mission of our university to all of our students. So I've seen core curriculum at other institutions. In fact, I studied specifically Catholic institutions across the US as a comparison. The number of theology classes that were required, the number of philosophy classes that were required is significantly higher than what we require here at Seton Hall. And the approach that Seton Hall decided to take was, while we have foundational courses that all the students have to take, what we have more and what we continue to build more are experiences across the entire curriculum. So if you're learning in SHIMS, and I see our ethicist Brian Pilkington here in one of our windows, you will hear a lot of concepts through the ethical and philosophical framework and how they connect with our mission in his classes. And if you go to a nursing class, you will hear another perspective or will work on a similar project. If you go to the business school, you will have a vital assistance program for the community that helps the community to do their tax returns for free. So it's really, our mission is everybody's business. And I think that that's something that we should continue to be very proud of. I can't compare with other parts of the world, but be very interested in understanding how this is happening at other institutions. So I don't know if anyone wants to share.
I see Father Luis here. I am a Jesuit production, actually, from the Pontifical Oriental Institute and the Gregorian University. And I think, Father Luis, that I was very well prepared, although, we were trained into the, ecclesiastical history and theology and whatnot. but to jump into this reality, which is, I mean, Catholic studies and Catholic intellectual tradition, this is a very American thing. And just to answer your question, Father Kay, are we part of a bigger reality? Yes, in the United States, yes, I can say it's a consortium of Catholic studies in Catholic universities here in the United States of America. And, you know, the core element here of all these programs and centers, it's the Catholic intellectual tradition. But now even IFCU actually have created this group at Seton Hall University, which we are very, very grateful. And we are having very productive, you know, discussions. So yes, this is a movement to integrate, to make it holy and whole, right? The Catholic intellectual tradition. It's more of an American thing. The European universities and also Latin American universities are getting there. And I saw colleagues here, even from ODUCAL, which is the big organization. Yes, Mario. So we are getting there, just reflecting through IFCU and through this consortium of Catholic universities. I saw colleagues also from the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities. So coming as a group is a very Catholic thing to do, you know, to reflect on these issues. I hope I answered your question, Father Kay. So it is a movement that is spreading.
No one ever quite answers my questions. It's always a beginning. We keep the questions going. We keep the conversation going. I wonder, Francois, are there others on the call who have more to add, more to say? Are we, as we say in English, missing the boat anywhere? Do we have a blind spot that we need to? Anybody have a feeling that there's more?
Can I possibly say something here, please? Is that okay? I work in the University of Glasgow and also work in University of Notre Dame in Australia, a joint appointment. But in Glasgow, we are a secular university. In the last year or so, a number of us, about 5 in total, we have come together to look at the possibility of forming some Catholic studies input or program. And that's something we are quite excited about. So there is movement there. And we also have a highly successful Catholic studies program and centre in Durham University, the northeast of England. You may have heard, that's the only one in the UK. So that's where we are in this context. But my question would be that in a Catholic university, is the purpose of Catholic studies to reorientate the mission, but eventually, if it's successful, it would dissolve because the whole university becomes Catholic studies? So are you kind of talking yourself out of a working group here, which would be great, because that's what we want to do. And maybe the term Catholic studies is something which is a good foothold in the secular university. Just again, a question just to ponder.
I'm going to write that question down. Thank you.
Actually, Leonardo, if I can interject,
Yes.
Leonardo and I, you know, Leonardo is part of our Catholic studies group, you know, at IFCU, so, and a very active one, actually. Yes, the Catholic, I'm sure, the state universities here in the United States, they are kind of adopting Catholic studies methodology and the Catholic intellectual tradition. For example, we have a very successful case with the University of Arizona, which is a huge state university, and they have created a Catholic studies program. And there are faculty from the University of Mary, which is a Catholic university here in the United States, that they have built a campus now at the University of Arizona. And the students at the University of Arizona, Catholics or non-Catholics, they take these courses. So there is a movement, and there is probably, you know, we need to look more at state universities, because even the student demographics, there are Catholics, you know, in these universities. For example, I saw the numbers here at Rutgers, for example, that we have here in New Jersey. And there are a lot of Catholics that are there, or wherever they are, Newman centers, which are very successful in state universities. And in this case, there is a market for Catholic studies, I think. And people, at least this is what I hear, do not go much, for theology or philosophy in the strictest, sense of the word, but they really need this connection between their discipline, what marketing, for example, or business, and something that has to do with their faith. And I think Catholic studies kind of feeds this market.
I love the idea, Ines, of the program in Catholic studies succeeding themselves right out of existence, because we've so thoroughly imbued the Catholic intellectual tradition in all corners of campus, all corners of our 3 campuses.
Could I say something, Father Kay?
Absolutely.
So I had this funny experience when I was home visiting my parents, and they always asked me, what's going on at Seton Hall? So I said, well, Dad, and my parents are, just very committed to their faith. I said, I'm working on some Catholic intellectual tradition initiatives, because I'm involved with marketing and the CIT website and the videos that Father Brian spoke about. And my father did not know of the Catholic intellectual tradition. And this is a man who he does know it, he just doesn't know the term. So it reminded me again of those 3 words being something that a lot of people have trouble wrapping their minds around. What are you talking about? But when, again, I'm thinking as a marketer, talking about faith and reason, faith in business, faith in art, faith in science, that means something. And I really think we need to just put it out there in the simplest terms, and then the light bulbs go off and people say, oh yes, faith and diplomacy, it's what we do here at Seton Hall and in many other places. So I just want to put that thought out there, that
And that's why you're in marketing, Linda.
trying, Katja, I'm trying always.
Yeah,
and it'll be really exciting. So we're going to be working on our student videos, and maybe we will involve faculty in them too, and asking students and asking faculty how the Catholic intellectual tradition, how faith intersects with their whatever their studies they're pursuing. It'll be so revealing to hear that. So I'm excited about that.
and also this makes even students more marketable. Speaking of market, I've had students, for example, that have gone to to medical school or to other very, very competitive fields, or getting an employment. And several of them have come to me and said, oh, professor, you know what? Yes, to enter medical school, you need to have a certain GPA. You have to have a certain, number of classes that you have to take, credits, whatnot. But if you give students something more, magis, we go for magis, for more, via these courses that we talked about, faith and reason, the popes, another one, a big course that we have, the students love it, the popes and science, right? I've had students coming to me and say, professor, you know what? They didn't ask me about my biology courses or chemistry courses. They are given, right? They ought to take these courses in order to go to medical school. But you have something different, but as meaningful, and that is the Catholic niche, speaking of market, right? To continue your conversation, Linda. So we are preparing students even to be marketable, even to offer something more, using the, I don't see Father Luis here, but magis, as St. Ignatius of Loyola, we go for more.
Excuse me, you've mentioned me twice. My connection is bad, so I turned off the video. And I came a little bit late because I had a financial council meeting. Going back to maybe an earlier comment, is Catholic studies more of an American thing? Obviously, the Gregorian University doesn't do a whole lot of Catholic studies. It's actually picking up students from the United States in the coming years, as does the Angelicum and some of the other pontificals. But I think the model is very different in Europe. My participation in FIUC makes me realize that the identity of Catholic universities does change, the models change from country to country. I just had I'm teaching a course on American church history, and we just had a discussion of the Land O'Lakes conference. And certainly the identity of Catholic universities in the United States is completely different because of that document. And so having to regain ways of stating identity in the United States is something that's maybe a little bit less overt outside of the United States. I'll be quiet now.
I don't know, Katja, if you wanted to say something a little bit about our Mission Mentors project, because going back sort of to a few conversations ago, the idea that so often our conversations kind of begin from the assumption that people have faith. And there are plenty of people who either don't, or like I was for many years, are kind of on the cusp. You know, you want to learn more about it, but you didn't grow up in a faith tradition or a different faith tradition. And how that's really given an opportunity for people, including me, to have dialogues with people that, you know, you wouldn't normally even meet. And then kind of a follow-up to that, one of the challenges with that, because we were teaching an interdisciplinary course, just logistically, how people handle that. To me, that is one of our, I don't want to say blind spots, it's one of our stumbling blocks, is truly teaching interdisciplinary courses, just because of the, you know, the logistic barriers, like what gets allotted to what school and who gets access to Blackboard and all that kind of stuff. Lower hand.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that. Unfortunately, the logistics of the course assignment to get in the way of the beautiful principle of co-teaching some of those courses. So that's our blind spot. Father Kay was looking for blind spots. One is our logistics. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that experience. I see Glenn Chatelier. Yeah.
Thank you. That's me.
Yes.
I'm reaching you from the Assumption University of Thailand at Bangkok, and we are a Catholic university mandated by the Ministry of Higher Education in the country. We are therefore, in a way, restricted from teaching Catholicism or any other religions at our university. So how do we work around this? We have two courses, one in behavioralistic ethics for all the undergraduate students as a core course. And then we've got a program of professional ethics seminars in which we bring the dialogues of different faiths together and somehow bring in Catholicism to get students to reflect on the values of Assumption University as a Catholic university and our teaching tradition, but also in relation to their own religions. Let me just share with you a striking anecdote, okay, from about 2 years ago. This was at the onset of the COVID pandemic. We encountered the case of an Afghani student whose father was taken in by the Taliban, and he had to get back to his country. And what was standing in his way towards graduation was the ethics seminar, which somehow his mentor or teacher said that he hadn't fulfilled the requirements. And one of the things that she then required him to do was to produce a statement, what is my purpose in life? Mm-hmm. Okay, and this student began to think in a very Catholic way. Okay, and his essay was really striking. And the lady professor was in fact a Thai Catholic who asked this question, you know, what is my purpose in life? And it was so impressive that although the assignment was turned in late and on humanitarian grounds, we had to let the student go. He's since returned to Afghanistan and we keep track of him. Okay, it's a very unfortunate situation there. Now, to enter into the question of Catholic identity and the various dimensions that you know each of you have raised, we face this challenge in a Buddhist majority country of being Catholic. Okay, and therefore, I mean, it's not so much of a defeating challenge, but a challenge to stand up and to let our presence be known. Okay, and one of the slogans that we use is, let your light shine so that others might see the goodness in you, that they will give thanks to the Father which is in heaven. You are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world. And I tell you that students capture these slogans, Buddhist, Hindu, agnostics, whoever, they carry these slogans with them through later missions in life. Okay, so that way, although we can't in a way foreground the Catholic identity, our mission is to educate. And we believe that education is liberation through the formation of thinking, to get them to think in a different way. Okay, thank you for giving me this chance to share. Okay, and I commend all of your comments. Thank you.
Now, thank you, Glenn. And you always remind us that we have the luxury of doing, our mission in situations that are not as difficult as in other parts of the world as well, and where you have to find also other ways to do your mission work. So thank you for sharing, your perspective. I see Alvaro Barbosa. Yeah.
Yes. Hello. Good night for me. I'm in Macau, China at the moment. And yes, thank you very much for this session. It's been really very interesting. And just some moments ago, we were, or you were asking, if there's something we are missing. And I always have the feeling every time I engage with the IFCU community that generally speaking, broadly speaking, Asia is underrepresented, and there's not a lot being said about the reality of Catholic universities in Asia. And here today we have my friend Glenn, who just spoke, and Sofal from Cambodia, and myself representing the University of St. Joseph in Macau, in China, the only Catholic university in the whole China. And the only point that I wanted to bring here, just for raising maybe some awareness, is it follows on what Glenn just highlighted, which is the idea that, generally speaking, in Asia, and we are part of the same, we have an association in Asia called the FIUC-IFCU, Association for Southeast Asian Catholic Colleges and Universities. The three of us our institutions are members. Glenn is actually one of the founders of this association. And we at the moment, we are 89 member universities in the whole Asia. And we are trying to do find our way forward together as a joint effort, and trying to find the commonalities between the universities in terms of our Catholic tradition. But the reality in Asia is very, very different than the United States or Europe. I'm Portuguese. I spent, before I come here 10 years ago, I was working mostly from Portugal. And of course, it's completely different reality. The majority of the universities, except for the Philippines, where you'd find that the majority of the students is primarily Catholics. In almost all other countries, you'll find that the community is primarily of non-Catholics. And so the way we approach how a Catholic university is encapsulated into the community needs to be substantially different than in Europe or United States, or Latin America, for that matter. I think even maybe in Africa. And so I just wanted to say that we are at let's say early stages of finding our way of what it means to have. Well, of course, some universities have been around for a long time and they have a long tradition, but many of our universities, like Sofal's University in Cambodia, is the first Catholic university in the country. Very young, very small. We support each other. It's just a new Catholic university is emerging in East Timor as well. So we're trying to together, the group of us, trying to support each other. But I just wanted to point out that we are very interested in this conversation, and it's like it was said before, it's an ongoing and developing conversation that we need to have, and needs to be adaptive to the reality of our area in the planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvaro. That's beautiful. And Franca, I know we have only a couple of minutes left, yes. So before I pass it on to you, I wanted to ask Father Kay if you have any other concluding thoughts that you want to leave us with, and then we'll pass it to Francois.
I know I see Glenn's hand up, but just to answer your question, I have absolutely no concluding thoughts because there is no conclusion. To be continued.
Thank you. Fantastic. Francois, we hope we can continue the conversation through IFCU.
Yes, and anyway, just to announce for Glenn, but Glenn attends since the beginning, has attended since the beginning of this webinar. In fact, we launched this webinar 2 years ago, and the idea was to show how diverse the federation is, and the fact that many universities, Catholic universities, are living in so diverse situations in the world that, of course, we have to face many challenges. And this topic of Catholic identity, of course, is one of the main topics that we can think about. And it's why we don't speak about Catholic identity, but Catholic identities. And the purpose is through, and thanks to this webinar, to enrich the members by the practices, the experiences, the best practices of our universities, knowing that, of course, the living in Europe, it's not the same than living in Asia or in the United States, but we can enrich all by our experiences. So thank you very much for this session, for the organization of this webinar. And I think that what you have said and explained is very interesting for all of us.